Okay, guys, hello. Just let me know if this has already gone live again. I'm sorry, that was a little bit technical for me, and I should have actually looked more. Hello, everyone. If anybody's in the chat, sorry about that last little technical difficulty. If anybody's already there and can tell me if I am live and if this works, just let me know and then I'll start. And hopefully I'll be able to work out how to screen share if I can through here. Okay, so it says up here that I'm screen sharing. Oh, hi, Tosh. Okay, awesome. All right, so today my chat is about what I do, which is so I do evolutionary astrology readings. I have been doing these for 12 years. So over that time, I've been fortunate enough to be able to connect with a lot of people and help a lot of people, I guess, direct and explore their divine blueprint from that evolutionary astrology point of view. And then in the last 4 years, so 4 years ago, I got introduced through human design and being an astrologer. So human design is an inclusive modality where many people are already familiar with human design. I guess human design is one of the more the modalities that a lot of people are quite aware of now. It's become very popular. And there is the whole manual there, so a lot of people can explore their own blueprint quite easily by studying human design. But for me, because I had already a strong astrology background and I've been studying astrology pretty much my entire life, so it was something that even as a little girl I always knew, and I knew it on a really deep level. So I would find myself reading astrology books and things like that, and just understanding the mythology and parts of the astrology on a really deep level, even to the point where I used to sort of be able to critically evaluate and sort of reflect on different things that other astrologers had said, and be able to work out if that's what I actually really thought. And so astrology was a really deep part of my knowing, I guess. And it wasn't until I met my teachers 12 years ago. So Beatrice she's a yoga teacher. She's in Nong Khai, it's on the Mekong over in Thailand. And I met and connected with her 12 years ago. And I found out that we share a birthday, except for she's 20 years older than I am. And she's an incredibly disciplined yogi on the path. And she really offered me what I had been missing in my whole yogic path as well, where I'm on live. No. So she offered me so with the whole yogic path that I had already been on, I was sort of looking for more deeper parts of that esoteric path, and she offered me that. And their teachings, her and her husband Pancho's teachings, were very, very deep and very opened my mind in many, many ways. And she reconnected me. So straight away, as soon as I met her, I had this knowing of her being my mother in many lifetimes and in settings. And then I had activated many lifetimes where I'd been an astrologer on many, many settings. So not just on this, not just on Earth either, but in many dimensions of knowing this astrology on a really deep level. And this started to be activated. So I started offering astrology readings, and that just went on and only got stronger over those years. And so when I came across human design, I was able to read and understand human design in a pretty deep way. The systems are different though. So human design is based on astrology, but it's also based on the Kabbalah and the I Ching. And it does have a different language to what evolutionary astrology does. In evolutionary astrology, so I'm going to bring up, my intention today was that I could bring up a few charts and I could show you how to look at and show you the Genekeys chart, what it looks like, the evolutionary astrology chart and what it looks like, and also the human design model and how to read it. So that's what I'm going to do with the Genekeys. So I did, as soon as I studied human design, straight away I went over, I had a reading off a guy called Mark Bentley, who was a Genekeys ambassador, and he would combine human design and Genekeys. So there are many people that can combine Genekeys and human design because the system is the same. So Richard Rudd, that created the Genekeys, he studied with Ra, who created, or Ura, who created the human design system. He studied with him for a long period of time, and then he went off on his own and had his own, because he's a deep mystic himself, and he had a really profound experience as well, where the Genekeys were delivered to him over a 3-day and 3-night process, and they were in a lot of detail. And because he's a poet, they come through in this magical transmission. Ura, who created human design, similar thing. So he had an experience where the voice, over an 8-day period, 8-night period, the voice, as he calls it, shared all of the transmissions of human design, to the point where on the 9th day, after it was all delivered and he'd written it down, he had almost a nervous breakdown, because the amount of information that was coming in was overwhelming. And then he got told that he needed to be the one that would deliver this to the world, because people would then be able to, in the coming great change, people would be able to understand the evolution of the species and their own journey through the evolution of their own divine blueprint. And he said that it would teach people more about themselves that they would ever need to know, because it was their exact reason that they were here, and their essence, their divine essence, and their connection to the whole. And he got overwhelmed with the idea that he would be the one that would have to deliver it to the world. And so he as the story goes, he burnt the documents that he'd written down over 9 days and nights, and then the voice kept sort of, haunting him, not in the way of a non-benevolent, but the voice kept haunting him that he needed to do this. So a year later, he rewrote everything that he could remember from the voice the year before, and then human design was birthed. So human design so there are quite a few astrologers, as I said, that are able to read between human design and Genekeys, because they work well together, coming from the same background and the same system. But not a lot of people are astrologers, because they don't need to be. You can learn human design and Genekeys yourself without an astrology background. But for me, having the astrology background, I really understand the teachings on a really deep level, and I'm able to offer a lot of insight for people that are wanting to know a lot about their divine blueprint, and what they're here to do, and why they're here, what's next in their what's the whole big story of the process of their evolution at this point, and what is their soul's journey or their soul's evolution longing to achieve in this lifetime. And so the Genekeys really are, they're the blueprint, they're the divine blueprint, or the essence of they're our genetic blueprint, which is why they're called the Genekeys. So in those two systems, the human design model is more the yang approach. It's more the literal approach, I guess. It's the mechanics of that person's blueprint, and more the science behind what's happening in astrology at that time of their birth, and 88 degrees before, which is a big part. In the Genekeys, they're considered to be a lot more yin, because they're mystical teachings, they're right-brained teachings. They're supposed to come in like magic when the person's ready. And the path to approaching the Genekeys is also very feminine, because with the Genekeys, it's the teachings are all through contemplation. So the path of contemplation is the middle way in the Taoist teaching. So there's an active way, which is sort of like the path of active yoga asanas. Then there's the passive path, which is considered to be the path like meditation. And the middle path is the path of contemplation, where it's both passive and active. but they are also very mystical, and they're supposed to be approached like that. So it's not reading the mechanics as human design is, but rather allowing, accepting, and embracing with gentleness and patience for these gene keys and the magic of these gene keys to come and unlock inside of you. And in that way, it's like a safety box. So Richard will describe that as being like a safety box where we might get all of our gene keys from our profile, and then we might learn which order they're supposed to go in even. But it's not until all the codes are put in the right order, in the right sequence, and then it's turned at the exact right angle with the right energy behind it. And then all of a sudden, all of the gene keys in the gift level just flood into you, and they all make sense. And this is a process of allowing. So some people have a spontaneous where all of the gene keys in their hologenetic profile are activated at once, whereas some people it's more like they each come into, because it's a hologram, so it is each of them coming in one by one and allowing them to be really deeply received inside of that person. And so I would like to bring up some charts now, if that's going to work for me. I'm trying to work out how I can do that on here. I think I just move this across a little bit. Hang on. Not that. I didn't want to do that. We'll shut that bit. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to start with, all right, I'm just going to bring up my chart, and I'll bring up my human design, I think, first. Okay. Let me know if this is working. Okay. So I just thought I'd use my chart for the purposes of this. So, all right, so up the top, so this is my human design. So what really is different when I come across to my evolutionary astrology chart, we'll see that there's some differences here. So here is the planets. So these are all the planets here, and over here, these are all the gene keys, or in human design terminology, they're not called gene keys, they're called the gates, out of the 64 possibilities of. And so the 64 possibilities, or the 64 fractals, they're like the 64 fractals of our DNA, and then the 64 fractals of love. They're the 64 fractals of possibilities of creation, or 64 shards of God. And when it comes across to the gene keys, the terminology they're expressed in a spectrum of consciousness. So out of the 64, none are better or worse, as in exactly the same with everything in star signs and everything. There's no such thing as anything being better or worse than anything else. But each of the 64 has a shadow frequency all the way through to the city, which is SIDDHI, through the pathway of the gift. And this is a spectrum of evolution and a spectrum of consciousness. So the shadow's obviously at the shadow end of consciousness. And then the city is a Sanskrit word for the enlightened expression, or the highest possible expression of that gene key expressing itself. And so here we have the 64 possibilities. So these black ones, so these are the planets. So we go down from, this is the sun, this is Earth, and Earth itself doesn't often get put into astrology. Astrology, when we come across to the astrology map, you often won't see the placement of Earth at all. But it's always directly opposite the sun, to the exact degree in opposition. So if you're a Scorpio sun person, then you'll know that your Earth placement will be Taurus, and that's how it works. So this is the sun, this is Earth. These are the glyphs for these different, so to show what they are. So sun, Earth, moon. This is the north node. This is the south node of the moon. These are hugely important in evolutionary astrology because they're the axis of evolution. Whereas in Gene Keys terminology, the earth is actually called the evolution key, but it's a different thing to the evolutionary axis of the soul, which is the north and south node. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And these are so I'm on the 55th gene key, is as my sun. That's my conscious sun. Then it says line 2, so I'm on the second line. There's 6 lines because these are out of the I Ching, where there's 6 possibilities there of each of these gateways. So this is my day of birth. So these are where all these planets, this is which gateway they fell on the day of birth for me. So these are called my personality gene keys. I call them sometimes the personality crystals. But these are the personality gene keys, or the personality gateways for me. They're also called my conscious keys. Okay, so these are my conscious ones. This is what I'm conscious of. Then over here, this is 88 degrees before birth. So this is different in human design and gene keys that hasn't been in the past included into astrology. And this bit is fascinating. This is one of the hugely, deeply important parts of human design and gene keys that I was just absolutely intrigued by straight away, being an astrologer. I really wanted to know what is going on at 88 degrees, which is basically roughly 88 days before birth. So at 88 degrees, which is mostly 88 days, sometimes 89 days before birth, this is where all the planets were for me in these gateways. So what's happening, and Ra doesn't go into the whole, I've downloaded everything that Ra had to say about this, and I still couldn't get the whole story. And so the rest I intuitively knew. And this got downloaded to me, this bit. And this is what I get really excited about. So our soul, our incoming soul, and I always saw this when he was explaining the parts that he explained. I always saw this as a Merkaba or a Merkaba. So people pronounce that differently. But as we know with the Merkaba or the Merkaba, the involutionary process, the involution is a pyramid that's going down. This is the yin, or the feminine pyramid. So it's the pyramid that's going down into the earth, and it comprises of the energy of earth and water. So they're yin. So involution. This is our soul coming in. And the other pyramid, which is the evolutionary pyramid, or the yang pyramid, which is made of fire and air. Fire and air. This is the pyramid that goes up. Now, something very special and significant happens at 88 degrees before birth, which is that our incoming, and it's already been communicating before the 88 degrees, as soon as this soul that's going to come into an incarnation is going to come down, it sets through the monadic monopole, it's communicating, and this is the magic of, this just blows my mind, in the magic of creation and the magic of the universe. It is sending messages down to the developing body that's developing in utero of what, and it's putting all of its messages down into the body so that the body that's housing this incoming soul is the right body and the right resonance for that incoming soul. So that incoming soul could not be put into any other body. And Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton talk about this in their work as well. You couldn't put a soul into a different body because it wouldn't read the cellular patterns, and it wouldn't work. The body would simply die. That person would die. Because each soul needs to have the right body that's in the right resonance for that soul to actually make this work. And so the soul that's full of its story in evolution, that is huge story in evolution, because it's traveled throughout many thousands of incarnations on this dimension or any other, already has a whole entire universe of wisdom. It has, within the cells of our body, we have an entire memory of all of creation. So literally, when astrologers would say as above, so below, It's because as above, the entire universe is mapped out in every single cell of our body. For ourselves and our own journey throughout time, throughout this dimension or any other, we've had our story. And our story is imprinted into the cells of our body. And our body that's developing in utero when we're in our mother's womb, it's already being fed the information that that incoming soul is all about. And so at 88 degrees, the incoming soul and the body that it's housing come in together because the incoming soul has its own crystal and the body has its own crystal, and they're in a perfect resonance to hold each other. And this process happens 88 degrees before birth, where the two crystals lock in. And this is what I see as this Merkaba or the Merkaba. And so it is our whole divine blueprint. We can activate our entire wisdom throughout every part of our evolution through this process. It's all there. And so these over here, these 88 degrees before my birth, all these planets were in these gateways or these gene keys. So these ones are called my design gene keys, my design gateways, or also my body crystal, and also my unconscious. So these ones are the unconscious. The red's the unconscious and the black is the conscious. Okay, so then when it comes down to here, this is the 9 channels that human design work with. All the 64 gateways are here within these 9 centers. And then you can see where mine are activated. So the 55th is an emotional center down here. This is part of the solar plexus. So this is here. I have the 55. You can see that it's black for me because it's on my personality or conscious crystal. So it's a black gateway for me. The 49 to the 19th, I have that whole circuit, but it's all conscious. You can see that's all black. So that means it's all conscious for me. It's connecting solar plexus down to the root chakra. You can see then the red ones. So the red ones are my unconscious gate. So you'll find them over here. So you can see the 10 there, the 20's up here. It's my earth placement, and the 34 is my unconscious sun. So the red channel is my unconscious, and it's making a full circuit. So these ones are combined to make a circuit from the 10 to the 20 to the 34, which is all in my unconscious. When it's red and black down here, it's coming from both my conscious and my unconscious. So the gene keys will be found on both. Yeah, and when it makes up the whole channel or the whole circuit, it makes a combination like these ones do. And this is how this works. When you go up further, so I'm the right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix, gate 55. This is where humanity is mutating through at the moment. This gate is the gene key of focus as it's the focus of evolution at the moment. So it's where the entire species is supposed to be evolving through in this huge awakening. Because I'm the 20th of February, which I'm 1 degrees Pisces, and because we're at the great change shift between the 2 great ages, between Pisces and Aquarius, and this is where this lies. So that's why humanity is moving through the 55th gateway. The whole action is happening at the solar plexus through the channel of the whirlwind. And that's why this is speeding up. It's a whirlwind process as we evolve, because we are genetically mutating and becoming a genetically very different species. Our dormant DNA is reactivating and connecting, and we are learning through this process, we're becoming superhuman. And it's fast, it's rapid, and that's why it's called through the whirlwind. And it's all happening through this emotional center, because all the emotions are being stirred back up. So so it's holding on as we evolve quickly through this channel of the 55. And so I'm a manifesting generator, profile 2-4. So manifesting generators will have always solar plexus, not solar plexus, sacral defined, which is here, and throat defined to get a manifesting generator. without throat defined, it can be just a generator if they have this one defined, and projectors won't have this one defined. Reflectors have everything white and empty. So I'm not going to go too much into that, more into human design, but I always use human design because to read, all of the planets aren't included yet into the hologenetic profile. When I do my readings, I always use the nodal axis because, and I've told Richard Rudd that. It's actually Richard Rudd's birthday today. Yeah, so we're on the transit today is the 64th gene key, conscious sun. And that's what he has, obviously. So Richard did a whole series on reincarnation, and he talked, and he says in there, he said, on one hand, I do understand why spiritual coaches or spiritual advisors are not talking so much about reincarnation, but on another level, I don't know why they're not, because it's one of the most important things that people can understand about their whole journey throughout evolution. And I wrote to him, this is a couple of years ago, and I said, I 100% agree. And since I've even been teaching in this realm of, yoga and astrology, I would never not talk about the process of evolution or reincarnation, because it's just so important. You cannot simply read, and this is why I was never just a Western astrologer, because Western astrology just looks at sun and moon and everything placements of now, but they don't look at where the souls come from. And without that understanding, it makes no sense, because when you think about it, if there's twins, they have the same chart and the parents still saying, why are they so different? And in evolutionary terms, it's completely easy to work out. They're on completely different evolutionary journeys, and they're on completely different evolutionary they're at a completely different evolutionary path, coming from completely different places in the universe that they've already experienced. And so that's why I always had to focus on the big picture. And I said to Richard Rudd, I agree. And that's why I've always talked about that. But why aren't the nodes added yet into the gene keys? Because the nodal axis shows us a lot about where that soul's come from and the soul's main intention to evolve in this lifetime. And he said, I know, I just haven't been shown how the nodes get added yet into the hologram, because they've got to perfectly fit into the magic of that hologram. So I still, from that point, was like, well, I'm still going to be, when I do my readings, I always talk about the gene keys, because there's so much depth of wisdom to be explored there. But I always add the nodal axis, and the way that I look at the nodal axis is through my understanding of the degrees of astrology, but also it's there in human design. I can see that in human design, I can see that I am on, my south node is the 19th, my south node is the 19th gateway, line 4, or the 19th gene key. So when it comes across to the gene keys, I can download the 19th gene key audio. And even though it's not in the hologenetic profile of the gene keys, I can listen to it and allow the same process that you allow the gene keys to work, by contemplating and in my life and allowing them in through the context of my south node. Now, the south node in astrology is where that soul's incarnated from. It's not just, and mine's Aquarius. So this gene key, this 19th gene key is an Aquarian. This is my conscious south node. This is my unconscious. The 13th gene key is Aquarius. The 33rd gene key, my north node is Leo. The north node, my unconscious north node, is the 7th gene key, Leo. This one's about leadership and guidance, being the type of leader that I would follow. So it's the guidance and being able to be a leader in the light. And this one's about deep listening. It's empathy through being able to be deep listening. So this is what I've already developed in other lifetimes. But this one, my north node, is what I'm working on in this lifetime to really consciously bring into my whole evolutionary experience. When it's on my unconscious, it's a little bit different because it's already within me in the body, but I still have to allow that process of being able to follow that knowing of that I'm able to step into guidance, in that role of guidance. And it's more unconscious, so it is stored right in my body. I don't consciously have to work on it as much as what I do with this one. But I need to really trust this one on a deep level, that it's already in me and that it'll come out in the right way. And yeah, and then over here, so 19 and then the 33. The 33 is my conscious north node. So it's something that I consciously can aim at, of being able to really activate in this life, because some souls that are not convinced or conditioned or programmed by society through the patriarchal times that we're coming out of, where we've been in ignorance and fall, souls that don't get brainwashed to forget that they're a soul and a spirit more important than anything else. Well, some souls activate their north node straight away. They remember what they're here for. They remember their main contract of why they even incarnated in the first place. Whereas a lot of souls throughout patriarchal times and throughout the whole last epoch, really, where we were in the ignorance and the fall of humanity, where we forgot the magic of our divinity and we just saw this as a material plane of suffering and China and competition and everything else that was quite distorted. Some souls never, ever, ever activated their north node. They went through their whole incarnation never activating their north node. And if they don't activate their north node, they have to do it all over again, because the soul is a motivating force that always knows exactly what it's doing. It can never, ever be wrong because it's the soul. It's a fractal of God. And it's 100% right 100% of the time, and it's the only thing to follow. Our mind, we know, is very important for our survival, to keep us safe, but our mind should always be the co-pilot to our soul, and our soul's the pilot. That's where we've gotten it wrong many times, and that's why the whole yogic path was developed, because often we put the mind in front, but the mind has a negative bias, as we know, and it only knows the things that have happened in the past. And when there's been traumas or things that have gone wrong in the past, its position is to alert the person to be aware of the traps and go into that negative spiral of what if. So if the mind's in charge, it doesn't know the future. It doesn't know where the soul's going. So people that stay trapped in their mind or stay trapped in their south node out of comfort, out of safety of they've already been there, even though the south node is there's trauma signatures there, because in every incarnation, even this one, no one gets through their life trauma-free. So the south node is an accumulation of traumas as well as talents and skills that we've developed in many past lives, in many different settings, in many different dimensions. So the south node is not something that we're supposed to be dropping and letting go of, but it is something that we're supposed to be clearing the traumas and knowing that they keep us sometimes trapped in a negative bio loop or a negative pattern. And that itself is the path where the cycle of samsara continues, and also where we could even call that karma, negative karma, because we know that karma could be viewed as every action has an equivalent reaction, positive and negative, in the universe. We can also look at karma as being someone spiraling around on their traumas from the past, but they still continue to stay there, because even though there's traumas, they also know it. It's also familiar. So it's a safety net of never evolving. And so what the idea is whatever our south node is, so mine's Aquarius, so I can look at it under the umbrella of Aquarius in evolutionary astrology, or I can go further into looking at which part of Aquarius or which actual gateway of Aquarius is it on. And it's the 19 and the 13 for me. So I've developed in other lifetimes, I've developed traumas to do with, this one's shadow is codependency and this one's discord. So I've developed traumas around this theme of codependency and discord. And if I stayed there in codependency and discord because I'm too scared to move away from codependency, then I'll just keep spiraling around here and I won't evolve. I also developed skills through the 19 and the 13. And this is empathy and being able to listen deeply to humanity. And this skill here is being able to make sacrifices for the whole. This is the pathway of sensitivity and then the city of sacrifice. And the city of sacrifice is where we actually understand the entire journey of evolution. And at the citic level, we don't take the cities personally. We see them as allowing humanity to evolve. So in the past, I have, and I know my past lives, many of them, I've made certain sacrifices for the whole. Okay. And I've also been able to have deep empathy for the cycles. Now, Aquarius itself is the reason that it gets called a trauma signature in astrology is because it keeps the Akashic records. It keeps the memory. Now, Aquarius is it's an air sign, but it's the water bearer. People get confused and think it's a water sign, and it's not. It's an air sign. It holds the water, and the water is the memory. So Aquarius holds the memory of the past of humanity. It also is the sign that splits because it also knows the future. Uranus is the future. And Aquarius gets split there because part of it wants to keep itself safe, and it doesn't want to, and it's got a trauma there where it remembers the traumas that the whole collective of humanity have had to experience, and it consciously remembers them. It sits in the consciousness because Uranus is the collective consciousness and the memory of that in the subconscious. So you can imagine and it's the upper mind. Uranus is the upper mind. It's the higher octave of Mercury. So you can imagine that Aquarius signatures can hold this memory of the past events that humanity's had to go through. And in this last epoch, in the fall and the forgetting, where we've been in the deep ignorance as a species, we've had some horrendous things happen in our history. And Aquarius remembers that. And it gets fearful. It's also a fear signature because it gets fearful that humanity is cycling back into those same traumas. And it wants to help humanity to evolve into the future, because its deepest longing for Aquarius is to break free completely of the traumas and to break free of the cycles that keep us so limited and stuck. And Aquarius has the answers because it has the higher ability of the mind. It can see where the collective potential is as humanity to evolve and break out of limited things that are keeping humanity traumatized and stuck in their ways. And so that's what, as a South Node Aquarian, that's what I've developed. I've developed this ability to be able to see the bigger picture, to be able to see how to help humanity consciously evolve, to be able to see where we can enlighten, because it's the age of Aquarius is about enlightenment. It's the age of information. Because of that, it sets us free when we use it for the higher breaking free patterns and breaking free as a collective. But it also, on the negative, on the shadows, is where we could keep cycling around in those traumas and recreating patterns. It also is a trauma signature when it's used for transhumanism at the negative way, because it's about technology and it's also can distance itself from emotions. This can be a positive thing if it's detaching emotionally, so it's got the objective of being able to see without the entanglement of drama and emotions. It can see clearly the big picture. But also the trauma of detaching from emotions is that then it means a person's emotionally detached, that they can't have that compassion, and they are more likely to go into AI timeline without actually knowing that that's been a trap or a trauma of technology going into an advancement for the wrong reasons. So this is all the Aquarian. And then up here, yes, the Leo is where I'm trying to use the skills that I've developed as Aquarius and take me towards the Leo as being able to be a leader of the light through my heart and through compassion and through understanding. And over here, it's through the falling in love with my own story, the final revelation, and the remembering of the magic of who we really are as multidimensional beings that are having a physical experience, but we're so much more than that. We're the entire universe. We're God as a fractal. And it's bringing that into my guidance so that I can teach that and show that to humanity and help humanity to understand that for themselves, that they are miracles and magic, essence of divinity. So yeah, so you can read a lot from human design. I can shut that one down now and then have a look over here. So this one, so this, if it was a Western astrology chart, it would be the same. It would look the same, except for they'd just be focusing more on, sun, moon, ascendant, and different connections and aspects to all the planets. So here we've got like Mercury, Venus, etc. In evolutionary terms, we're looking at this evolutionary axis very importantly. Also, any skip steps to the, which is squares, square aspects to the nodal axis. So I've got a skip step of, my skip step is Black Moon Lilith is one of my skip steps, and so is Chiron. I'm at 0 degrees Virgo. That's questionable. I don't know. One of my birth times is written down at 7:30 and one's written down at 7:35, and writing away from my archives, which is what people can do for their birth time. They keep 100, they keep the archives of your birth for 100 years in Western countries through the hospital system, but it says both for me. So 7:30, because I had a traumatic delivery. So the time wasn't really the focus. They didn't write it down. They were trying to get my heart rate back. So if I'm 7:30, I was 7:30 p.m. I was Leo rising at the last degree at 29 degree, and 7:35 I was Virgo rising. So I go right in the middle, which is 0 degrees Virgo rising, but I'm definitely regarded as a cusp there on my ascendant. And same, I'm 1 degrees Pisces, which is not far into Pisces. Obviously, it's sort of considered to be a cusp, but my teachers don't use cusps. I'm just an actual Pisces, like Pisces sun. Aquarius, you can see all my Aquarius signatures here. So this is where the South Node is, and Black Moon Lilith is the skip step, and so is Chiron, because they're in a square arrangement to my axis. And that all goes together to tell a story. So which is, in the past, in other lifetimes, I've been already moving towards Leo. This has been a trauma signature, which has prevented it, which is my Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio and my Chiron. And these are both wounding patterns of, so for anyone that knows anything about Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, she in mythology is she's a big puller now in our great change. She's being rebirthed because when we went into patriarchal times in humanity, it's known that the Bible was fabricated and corrupted. And that's what set the tone for the patriarchy, was the corruption of the Bible. whether it was corrupted intentionally or whether it was corrupted partially unintentionally, because Jesus is an ascended master and an incredibly evolved yogi and wise, deep, compassionate soul. He obviously, what he did, the people that were around at that time were trying to create a story out of him based on their point in evolution, which was much lower than his point in evolution. So they're trying to make a Bible about him when they don't even know anything compared to he does in terms of soul's evolution. So it would have been unintentionally corrupted in that way, because they're trying to share his teachings through their limited understanding of evolution and through their limited point of their soul's evolution. The intentional corrupt part comes when they take out reincarnation out of the Bible. And it's also known that Lilith was the first woman, but she was demonized in mythology and demonized in the Bible as being, because she was so conscious, but she was deeply unapologetic for being that conscious. And she was a wild woman in that way. She was fiercely conscious, and she was not going to be passive about her power and her ability to transform consciousness. And so she's thrown out of the Bible, and instead they've replaced Lilith with Eve, and they've demonized Lilith, saying that she was this and that and all these things. Eve was much more compliant. So the Bible then says that she comes out of Adam's rib cage or whatever she does, or shoulder or something, and she's not even a woman of her own right. She just comes out of Adam's from somewhere. Lilith is where our power was taken away at the turn of the patriarchy, and where we'll rebirth if we allow it at this coming great change and this turn into the matriarch. This is where Lilith reclaims her power through her consciousness. For me, being a trauma signature, in Scorpio, it is pretty quite wild there, and it's about being able to step into that and not do what the Aquarius shadow does, which is be scared to step out at the expense of being beheaded, like the witch trials, or thrown out of society and not able to survive on my own. So the Aquarius trauma signature comes when there's a trauma of breaking free from consensus because of what that might mean, of not having the collective behind you and strength in numbers, and then being outcast and not being able to speak up for my own truth. But because I have Black Moon Lilith there, it's also a deep necessity of my soul's journey to be able to deeply speak my own truth and be myself and not be scared to step back. And then if I can heal that, then I can be more able to be leading in this Leo realm of light through the heart and the compassion, like a compassionate leader, which is because Leo rules the heart, and it's a leader. It's a leading energy. In the context for me, it's in my 12th house, so it's not a direct leading role. It's not a direct like authority role. It's a leader of, more in the spiritual realm, which is a lot more mystical, and the setting's very spiritual. So there's a little bit about that. There, your moon, you can see all these different types of things. So that's how we read evolutionary astrology. And then lastly, so I haven't got long, I'll bring up the Genekeys. It's not that clear. I didn't make it that large. Hang on. Yeah, okay, so here, this is my hologenetic profile. The 52's up there, that's my conscious, it's called life's work in Genekeys terminology. My evolution gene key, that's the 59, that's over here. My earth placement. Then down here, my unconscious earth is my anchor. This is called, so down here, this is called my purpose. It's the inner purpose. It's your anchor. It anchors in your whole activation sequence through your divine blueprint. So if this one's in its shadow or out of alignment, nothing else in the whole hologram has an anchor point, and everything else is out of alignment. So for me, the shadow is superficiality. It's not the same as vanity. There's a different gene key for vanity, but it's being superficial in the way of, when I'm not present, I scatter my energy and I'm not really listening. So, and I do this all the time too. So if I'm scattering my energy, my kids are talking to me and I'm not even listening. I'm not being present. And that throws me, my whole evolution, out of alignment. Because if I'm not present, because the city of this one is presence, if I'm not present and I'm superficially listening or superficially engaging to anyone, then I'm not of service at all. I can't be of service to myself or of anyone else. So my whole genius is down. If I'm in mindfulness and presence and I'm fully present, then everything else over here, the whole thing, has an anchor point or a reference point to fall into alignment. Because this gene key that we find down here is the one that anchors us in at our dantian. And then over here, this is my unconscious sun, my radiant sphere. This one's our auric field and our immune system. Also, we know that sort of one misconception in the yogic path has been in the past. I remember even because I've been on that yogic path for teaching for 12 years, but 14 years of practicing yoga consciously and being quite disciplined. But I remember in the beginning, here, even in Australia, there was a misconception about that you had to get rid of your ego in the path of yoga. And then we realized throughout our teachers that it's actually, you wouldn't even be able to function or live or speak your own name if you didn't have an ego. It's your whole entire immune system, your boundaries, and your aura. So you need an ego. But the thing is that we're trying to dissolve the unhealthy ego and then reassemble and realign the healthy ego. And so what gene key over here in our radiance is our auric field and our immune system that's attached to our ego. When it's in its shadows, it shows more about when it's in its shadows, it's more where the unhealthy part needs to be dissolved. And for me, that's the shadow of force, the gift of strength, and the city of majesty. So when I'm in presence and freedom and transparency instead of dishonesty, then this will move into strength and majesty, because they all sort of trigger each other. They all hold the fort. So it's like holding the elements or the directions, sorry. So the north and the east and the south and the west, they hold the fort. And then in here, we've got all our deeper gene keys that are processes of 7-year cycles. So the red ones, these are the Venus sequence. These are all patternings of our development going through 7-year cycles, where we emotionally evolve and where we spiritually evolve and where we physically evolve and where we mentally evolve. And also where we've been imprinted through the womb up here, the traumas as well as the gifts, and how we heal ancestral karma and ancestral wounds through here and free up that ancestral lineage. And here is the blue ones are our pearl. So they're how we end up, they're our path to prosperity and how we serve the whole, in alignment to our prosperity as well as the prosperity for the whole. So, and the whole of species. So that's the gene keys. This is its own system, obviously, which is incredible. That's why I became a Genekeys guide, because I just was like, yeah, I'll do every single course Richard has, and which I have done, because it's profound. And then add it into evolutionary astrology and help people see their divine blueprint through the 3 systems. So sorry about my wobbly start there. Distractions and also not being able to work technology. But thank you for being with me and trusting me. For anyone that's had a reading in the past, I know I've had some amazing testimonials, and for some reason I hold back sometimes in sharing. It just seems something that they can share, but I don't know why I don't share, because I've definitely had some amazing ones over the time, and I'm very humbled, because I know that it's definitely something that I can be of service to help with this evolution of our species through this my gifts. And so anyone that's tuned in through this whole entire process, anyone that's supported all of us on this book, each other that are in the book, like, I deeply thank you. Tash absolutely held the most incredible space for all of us, and I'm just over the top with gratitude for that, and I really mean that. And so much love to everyone, and thank you for tuning in so much. Thank you so much. Love, and bye for now.